if you think range anxiety or, massive nationwide charging networks and billion-dollar battery research facilities are the absolute cutting edge of modern technology, well, you are off by about 145 years.
Yeah, quite a bit off.
Right. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are tearing into some incredible historical research today, and it's going to completely dismantle an idea we all just kind of blindly accept.
The whole manifest destiny of the gas engine.
Exactly. The idea that the gasoline engine was just naturally destined to win. We are going to explore how this bizarre cocktail of historical accidents, disastrous marketing, and just wild dramatic irony actually killed the electric car a whole century ago.
And to really grasp the magnitude of this, you, the listener, need to just completely drop the assumption that technological progress is a straight line.
Right, because we always assume that, right?
We do. We have this bias where we assume the quote-unquote best technology always naturally wins out in the free market, like it's evolution or something.
Yeah, survival of the fittest tech.
Exactly. But the modern world built itself around petroleum, not because a gasoline engine offered a superior driving experience. I mean, for a long time, it was objectively the worst option available.
The absolute worst.
Yeah, it won because of brutal market forces, sheer luck with timing, and a really massive psychological war over human perception.
So to understand how the electric car died, we actually have to realize that it was winning. Let's travel back to the streets of America in the year 1900.
Set the scene.
Right. If you wanted a horseless carriage back then, gasoline was actually the noisy, dangerous, foul-smelling underdog.
It really was. Look at the actual market share at the turn of the century. It was a three-horse race, and gasoline was dead last.
Which sounds crazy today.
Totally. 40% of automobiles were powered by steam, 38% were electric, and gasoline was sitting at just 22%.
And steam cars intuitively make sense to us historically, I think. Steam powered the transcontinental railroads and all the industrial factories.
Oh, they packed a massive punch, too.
Yeah. There was a Stanley steamer that set the world land speed record in 1906. It hit over 127 miles per hour on the beach at Daytona.
Which is terrifying in a 1906 vehicle.
Unbelievable. But the daily reality of owning one was just a nightmare. Picture standing outside in a freezing New England January for like 45 minutes.
Just waiting.
Just waiting for your car's boiler to build sufficient pressure so you can drive down to the local general store.
And that is assuming everything goes perfectly. If that boiler runs dry while you are driving, you are risking a literal catastrophic explosion directly under your seat.
Oh, man.
Steam was proven technology for, a locomotive that runs all day, but it was completely impractical for a quick errand, which leaves consumers choosing between gasoline and electricity.
And starting an early gas car wasn't just inconvenient, it was a high-stakes game of physical roulette. You couldn't just slide behind the wheel and turn a key.
Not at all.
You had to walk to the front of this shaking, oil-spitting hunk of metal, grab a heavy iron hand crank bolted directly to the engine block and wind it using your entire body weight.
Shoulders, back, legs, everything.
Yeah, and engines backfired constantly. When that happened, that crank would violently spin backward. Shattered wrists, broken arms, dislocated shoulders, they were just considered a normal, accepted risk of driving to work.
I mean, risk is putting it mildly. People die doing this.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Take the tragic case of Byron Carter in 1908. He actually founded the Carter Car Company.
Okay, an industry guy.
Exactly. He stopped to help a stranded driver on a bridge in Detroit. He went to crank her stalling Cadillac, the engine kicked back, and the heavy iron crank struck him squarely in the face. It completely shattered his jaw.
And this is 1908. There are no antibiotics.
Right. Infection set in almost immediately. Complications arose, and Carter died. He was a prominent automotive founder, literally killed by the physical act of starting someone else's car.
Wow. Compare that visceral, bloody nightmare to the 1900 electric car. You get in, you push a lever, you drive.
So simple.
No hand crank, no boiler explosions, no choking smoke, no teeth-rattling vibration. Just complete, elegant silence.
And they had a top speed of about 20 to 25 miles per hour, with a range of 50 to 80 miles on a single charge.
Which is plenty for the time.
Exactly. If you lived in the city running errands, or say if you were a doctor making house calls at 3 a.m., it was absolute perfection.
Okay, let's unpack this because the market clearly saw that value, right?
Oh, absolutely. There were over 33,000 electric vehicles registered in the U.S. by 1900, and the business models they were experimenting with were shockingly modern.
The electric vehicle company is the perfect example here. They were the biggest car maker in the country before Ford or General Motors dominated.
And their masterstroke was that they didn't even sell cars.
Right, they rented them out, you drove it all day, returned it to a central garage, and the company charged it overnight so it was ready by dawn. They were running a modern tech subscription service, treating it like a horse stable with electrical wires.
What's fascinating here is how this infrastructure was deeply integrated into global cities. London had an entire fleet of electric cabs.
The hummingbirds, right?
Yes. Citizens affectionately nicknamed them hummingbirds because of the gentle, high-pitched sound they made gliding through the cobblestone streets.
I love that.
New York, Boston, Baltimore, they all ran massive fleets of electric cabs. The product wasn't some experimental prototype. It was real, heavily market-tested, and for urban environments, it was vastly superior to anything else.
But wait, if the electric car was objectively safer, quieter, didn't threaten to break your arm, and was already deeply established in major cities, how on earth did anyone spin that as a negative? Why did it lose ground?
By attacking the driver's masculinity. Yeah, the electric car fell into a massive cultural trap. Because it was clean, quiet, and didn't require brute physical strength to start, manufacturers leaned heavily into marketing it almost exclusively to the wealthy, and specifically to women.
So they just alienated half the market.
Pretty much. Companies like Detroit Electric designed their cars to feel like rolling parlors. They featured plush upholstery, delicate curved glass windows, and instead of a heavy steering wheel, you steered with a tiller, almost like a boat.
Wait, a tiller instead of a wheel?
Yes, because early gas cars were incredibly front-heavy with massive engine blocks, right? So they required a large steering wheel just to give the driver enough physical leverage to actually turn the tires.
Ah, that makes sense.
But electric cars didn't have that heavy front-end weight. A simple tiller worked perfectly, and it kept the cabin feeling open and uncluttered, exactly like a Victorian drawing room.
I am still trying to wrap my head around the psychology of this. Society essentially decided that because the technology was reliable and safe, it was a quote-unquote woman's car.
Pretty much, yeah.
Male fragility in the early 1900s was so intense that men outright refused to buy the objectively better city vehicle. I was reading about how the stigma became so toxic that some electric car makers literally bolted fake radiators onto the front of their EVs.
It's absurd.
They were strapping useless metal to a battery-powered car just to masquerade as a gas-guzzling danger machine, so men would be willing to be seen in them.
The cultural equation of masculinity with noise, physical danger, and complex, dirty mechanics became a massive psychological hurdle.
It really did.
Electric cars were handicapped simply because they lacked gruffness. Men felt that if a machine didn't require physical domination and, a little bit of peril, it wasn't a real machine.
Right.
But as powerful as that stigma was, bad marketing and fragile egos alone didn't kill the EV.
No, they just softened the target. It took 3 massive rapid-fire hammer blows of economics and innovation to finally finish the job.
The final nails in the coffin.
Exactly. Blow number 1 happened on January 10th, 1901, on a hill in southeast Texas called Spindletop.
Spindletop changed the global economy literally overnight. A mining engineer named Anthony Lucas and a self-taught geologist named Patillo Higgins hit oil.
And it wasn't just a strike. It was an absolute apocalypse of crude. The well vomited mud, went dead silent, and then erupted 150 feet into the sky.
Just a massive gusher.
It spewed 100,000 barrels a day. The ground literally shook. That single well produced more oil in one day than every other well in America combined.
And the economic conversion was staggering. Beaumont, Texas exploded from a town of 10,000 to 50,000 in just 3 months. By the end of 1902, that one field produced over 17 million barrels.
That is just an unfathomable amount of supply.
Right, and when supply skyrockets on that scale, the price of crude oil collapses. It dropped to 3 cents a barrel.
Think about the absurdity of that math. Water in those boom towns cost 5 cents a cup. Water literally cost more than oil.
It's wild.
Out of Spindletop, we get the modern oil titans, companies that would eventually become Texaco, Gulf, and Exxon. They didn't just extract cheap fuel, they realized they needed to build an inescapable infrastructure. Pipelines, massive refineries, and eventually gas stations on every single corner.
They made fuel ubiquitous,
Right.
and that inescapable infrastructure perfectly set the stage for the second blow, Henry Ford's Model T in 1908.
Ah, yes.
Ford didn't invent the automobile, obviously, but he fundamentally altered how human beings manufactured complex goods. By implementing the moving assembly line at his Highland Park plant, he deconstructed the entire building process into single, repetitive motions.
So replacing the craftsman.
Exactly. He replaced craftsmen painstakingly building a car from the ground up, with unskilled laborers tightening a single bolt over and over.
And the efficiency gains are just hard to overstate. Look at the stark contrast in 1924. Ford was producing up to 2 million Model Ts a year.
A staggering number.
He drove the price down to just $260. That was roughly 4 months' wages for an average factory worker.
Which made it accessible to almost anyone.
Exactly. Meanwhile, a bespoke Detroit electric car still costs nearly $3,000. It's like trying to sell a luxury $3,000 mechanical watch in a world where perfectly functional digital watches suddenly cost $2 and you can buy them at any grocery store.
Great analogy.
Ford turned the gas car into a democratic right, and it was powered by practically free Texas crude.
But even with practically free fuel and dirt-cheap cars, gasoline vehicles still harbored that one fatal flaw, the dangerous hand crank.
Right, people were still breaking their arms.
Exactly. Which brings us to the third blow, which is arguably the greatest historical irony of the entire automotive industry. Enter Charles Kettering.
The brilliant electrical engineer.
Kettering understood electricity in a way few others did. He realized that small electric motors didn't need to run continuously. They could be designed to produce a brief, intensely powerful burst of energy and then shut off. He first used this concept to invent the electric cash register in 1906, so clerks didn't have to manually crank the till. But then he looked at the automobile hand crank. Remember Henry Leland, the head of Cadillac?
The close friend of Byron Carter, the man who died from the shattered jaw?
Yes. Leland was deeply haunted by Carter's death and vowed to eliminate the hand crank forever. If we connect this to the bigger picture, when Kettering proved he could use a small electric motor powered by a heavy lead-acid battery to spin a gas engine's heavy flywheel at the push of a button for just 3 seconds.
Leland ordered 12,000 starter units immediately.
Exactly. By 1912, the electric self-starter was standard on Cadillacs.
So electricity itself neutralized the electric car's single biggest advantage. No more broken arms. Suddenly, anyone, regardless of physical strength, could start a gas car safely from the driver's seat.
Crazy to think about.
Charles Kettering used his absolute mastery of electricity to accidentally sign the death warrant for the electric car.
It is a profound paradox. But even after those 3 massive blows, Spindletop's cheap oil, Ford's assembly line economics, and Kettering's electric starter, there was still one secret, multi-million-dollar attempt to save the EV from extinction.
Oh, this part is amazing.
And involved the 2 most famous inventors in American history.
Thomas Edison and Henry Ford.
Yep.
Edison firmly believed the electric car was the superior technology for the future. But he knew the standard lead-acid batteries were a dead end. They were incredibly heavy, they leaked corrosive acid, and they degraded fast.
Just not viable long term.
Right. So he spent years obsessively developing a nickel-iron battery. He claimed it would have a 100-year lifespan.
A bold claim.
Very. And the development was brutal. He released an early version in 1903. It leaked, it failed in cold weather, and it was a humiliating public disaster. So he scrapped everything, went totally silent for 3 years, and rebuilt the chemistry from scratch.
And by the time Edison perfected the chemistry around 1910, Henry Ford, who idolized Edison and considered him his best friend, secretly got involved.
The Shadow Project.
Exactly. Ford funneled about $1.5 million into a shadow project. Adjusted for today, that is roughly $40 million.
Wow.
Ford's grand vision was to build a low-cost, mass-market electric vehicle on the wildly successful Model T platform, entirely powered by Edison's new Wonder battery.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Edison's brilliant chemistry had a stubborn, fatal flaw: high internal impedance.
Right, the bottleneck.
Think of internal impedance like a massive water tower. The battery has an enormous amount of energy stored up inside that huge tank, but the valve at the bottom, the pipe letting the water out, is tiny and narrow.
So just restricts the flow.
Exactly. When you open the tap, the water just trickles out. An automobile doesn't need a trickle. It needs a sudden, violent torrent of power to accelerate from a dead stop or to climb a steep hill. Edison's battery had the total capacity, but it couldn't deliver that instantaneous burst.
And Ford's engineers were panicking. They were struggling to make the prototype work for a highly anticipated demonstration. So they snuck behind Ford's back.
Oh.
Yeah. They quietly ripped out Edison's revolutionary nickel-iron batteries and
Right.
swapped in conventional heavy lead-acid ones just to make the car perform well enough to impress the boss.
Oh, man. And when Ford found out he had been deceived, he threw a legendary tantrum. He erupted, fired people on the spot, and instantly killed the entire $40 million project.
Just pulled the plug completely.
Ford Motor Company wouldn't attempt to build another electric vehicle for almost an entire century.
The ultimate hypocrisy of this era is what truly stands out here. Henry Ford and Thomas Edison were the primary architects pushing the globe toward a gasoline-dominated infrastructure. Yet, in their own private lives, they lived completely electric.
This is my favorite detail. Claire Ford, Henry's wife, absolutely refused to drive any of the noisy, vibrating gas cars her husband's empire built.
I don't blame her.
Right. Her daily driver was a plush Detroit Electric. Thomas Edison drove one too. Edison even built the world's first residential charging station in his own New Jersey garage back in 1908.
Wild.
The most powerful industrialists on planet Earth kept pristine electric cars in their personal garages, while ensuring gasoline was the only viable, affordable option for the rest of humanity.
We look at the Detroit Electric, which peaked in sales around 1916, and we see the twilight of an era. The company managed to limp along, catering to a wealthy niche, but eventually went bankrupt in 1929 and shipped its final custom-built car in 1939.
The end of the line.
But what is truly eerie is how the conversations from that era perfectly mirror the headlines today.
It's a 100-year echo chamber. Just listen to the timeline. The first practical EV hits the streets of Paris in 1881. The first car to ever break 62 miles per hour was an electric torpedo-shaped vehicle called the La Jamais Content in 1899.
Way ahead of its time.
Battery swapping stations to fix the charging time problem, formally proposed in 1896.
Wow.
Range anxiety. It was a recognized engineering challenge written about in 1903. Better chemistry, denser storage, charging networks, every single problem we are throwing billions of dollars at today was being fiercely debated before World War I.
This raises an important question, though. Did the electric car actually fail because of engineering limitations? The historical record says a definitive no.
It really does.
There was an endurance test in the 1910s where Detroit Electric covered 211 miles on a single charge.
211 miles.
Yes. The core engineering was remarkably solid. It failed due to infrastructure lock-in.
The concrete was literally poured for oil.
Exactly. The 1921 Federal Highway Act started paving long, smooth, interconnected roads between American cities.
Yeah.
Those roads were specifically designed for gas cars cruising at 45 miles per hour over long distances.
Right. And a 25-mile-per-hour EV designed for city errands just couldn't compete on that specific terrain.
Furthermore, rural America in the 1920s simply didn't have an electrical grid. You couldn't charge a battery at an isolated farmhouse, but you could easily buy a tin of refined gasoline at any Crossroads general store.
Makes total sense.
Add in the fact that World War I drastically spiked the global prices of copper and lead, materials essential for EVs, and the world just firmly locked itself into a petroleum ecosystem.
But the ghost of Edison's battery just received a massive, mind-blowing vindication. A research team at UCLA recently decided to revisit Edison's exact fundamental concept, nickel and iron in an alkaline solution.
With a modern twist.
Exactly. They applied 21st century material science. They embedded those elements into a highly conductive graphene aerogel structure.
And when those researchers added the graphene aerogel, they essentially solved the water tower problem you mentioned earlier.
Oh, the tiny pipe.
Right. The aerogel acts like thousands of massive valves tapped into that water tower, replacing that single tiny pipe. It allows all that stored energy to rush out instantly without any bottlenecking.
And the result is staggering. An Edison-style battery that charges in seconds and lasts for over 12,000 cycles. That translates to more than 30 years of daily use.
Incredible.
Some of Edison's original 1910 cells are actually still functional today, which proves his longevity claims were completely accurate. He simply lacked the modern material science to fix the impedance flaw.
Edison's fundamental chemistry was right all along. But because of timing and market forces, we spend the next 100 years radically altering the planet's atmosphere, fighting brutal geopolitical wars over oil supplies, and designing sprawling, decentralized suburban cities around the internal combustion engine.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the blueprint for a better path was sitting in Edison's abandoned factory the entire time.
It's wild to think about. So the next time you are sitting at a traffic light and a sleek, silent, new electric vehicle pulls up next to you and you think, wow, the future is finally here, remember that car is actually a ghost from 1912.
It really is.
The electric car didn't lose back then because it was an inferior technology. It lost because the world poured its concrete and built its culture around a lucky 3-cent oil strike in Texas. A brilliant engineer who ironically invented the electric starter, and a society that bizarrely equated the deafening noise and physical danger of a gas engine with pure masculinity.
It serves as a profound historical reminder. The infrastructure we choose to build fundamentally dictates the technology that survives, not the other way around.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends. If the internal combustion engine, a loud, violently vibrating, explosion-powered machine that originally required you to risk breaking your arm to start it, if that only dominated because it won the infrastructure and marketing race, well, look critically at the rest of your life today.
Oh, that's a great point.
Think about the software platforms you use every day, the healthcare systems we navigate, or the very food sitting in your pantry. How many other quote-unquote inferior technologies or systems are you just passively accepting as the absolute best simply because they had the loudest marketing and happened to lay their pipes down first? What obvious, vastly superior alternatives are currently hiding in the shadows right now, just waiting for us to finally build a world that can support them?